All right, time to talk some college football. Jimmy out along with Paul Stone on the College Sports Rush YouTube channel, brought to you by Bet Rivers. My personal spread record of 10-2. It came to a screeching halt. Yeah, I've got third-degree burns on my hand for not getting off the Auburn stove again. How many freaking times? How many ways can they find a way to lose? Speaking of the Auburn Tigers, let's get to Paul's first pick. Arkansas, the Razorbacks, 1-56.5 over the Auburn Tigers. Auburn now 0-4. They have lost some tough ones. A hideaway play in Norman. The goal line, the touchdown against Georgia at the end of the first half. Oh, by the way, longtime SEC official Ken Williamson permanently suspended, that was his crew for that Auburn and Georgia game. And then, of course, losing a fourth quarter lead at home against Missouri last week. They were lucky to cover against Texas A&M. They've been more than unlucky the last three non-covers there. So Arkansas, Bobby Petrino, this will be his third game as interim coach, the mastermind and former Arkansas head coach. They put up about 500 a game in yardage the first two games. So they are moving the ball. And Paul, you're looking at the hometown Razorbacks here, 156.5, critical for not in the playoff impact anyway, but critical for both of these coaches. If Petrino's trying to remove that interim tag and Hugh Freeze can't afford to lose to the Hogs here on the road.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question, Jimmy, if you don't mind. Permanently suspended, is that kind of the same as being fired?
Terminated,
Or
fired.
maybe not coming back? Permanently suspended.
Yeah, I mean that's
That's,
this is unusual for the league too. This is a
yeah,
this is
man.
they've come out and they issued that, I mean, immediately after the Oklahoma Auburn game, issued a
Mhm.
statement. And so this is a little bit different from Greg Sankey's offense in Birmingham.
Yeah, that's quite transparent there. They're, you know, at least they're, making efforts. Officiating's a tough job, and they have to be held accountable, though. And looks like they're, taking care of business and making some hard decisions. Looking at this Arkansas Auburn game on Saturday, you got Arkansas coming in at 0-3 in SEC play. Auburn, as you mentioned, at 0-4. But man, both these teams have really been close to conference victories. All three of the Razorbacks' defeats have been by one possession, and three of the Tigers' four defeats in conference play have also been one possession losses. You mentioned the outlier, the one that wasn't a one possession loss, the loss at home to Georgia a couple of weeks ago. Lose that game 20-10. Many, however, felt Auburn should have been leading 17-0 late in the first half. Ultimately ruled that Jackson Arnold did not have possession as he crossed the goal line. Quite a few people obviously disagree with that call. But anyway, for the record, Arkansas 0-3 in the SEC. Again, Auburn 0-4. One of these teams going to get off the schneid in conference play in Fayetteville on Saturday, and I believe it's going to be the Razorbacks. Auburn head coach Hugh Freeze, first of all, talking about his quarterback position, said earlier this week, that Jackson Arnold, who has started the first 7 games of the season at quarterback for Auburn, he's going to split reps, or has been splitting reps this week in practice with Stanford transfer Ashton Daniels. The staff will evaluate, look it over. They'll make a decision, and we'll see who starts on Saturday. But with him putting that out there in the media early in the week, I would be shocked if it's not Ashton Daniels. I don't think you put that kind of information out there and then trot Jackson Arnold out there again. It's certainly the offensive woes of Auburn, certainly not all on Arnold, but this offense desperately needs a spark, and Arnold has not been able to provide it to this point. So I think we're going to see Ashton Daniels get his first start as an Auburn Tiger on Saturday in Fayetteville. To make matters worse for Auburn, their third-year starting center, Connor Lew, he is out for the season with a knee injury. So you got the guy, he calls the signals, the blocking patterns and schemes for the offensive line. He's not going to be playing. They're going to have a new player at center snapping the ball. And also it could be raining in Fayetteville. So that sounds like a slippery slope. No pun intended there for the new center. Even though Auburn, they've got a solid defense without question. I think, Arkansas is still going to score. They've got that big 6'6" quarterback, Taylon Green. who is a true dual threat. He's thrown for 1,910 yards this year through 7 games, averages 8.6 yards per attempt. Also has rushed for 589 yards, averages over 7 yards per carry. He's a guy, Green, who's played a role in 22 of their touchdowns this year. He's thrown for 17 touchdown passes, rushed for another 5. So I think Arkansas's going to score some. I'm just not sure that Auburn's going to be able to keep up, regardless of who's at quarterback. Other than that Baylor game, they came out, guns a-blazing against Baylor in that Friday night opener in Waco. Really looked good. I think they ran for over 300 yards. But other than that, man, they hadn't shown a whole lot offensively, haven't scored over 17 points in any of their 4 SEC games, only averaging 13.5 points per game in SEC play. Outside of just a deluge or a downpour, I think they're going to score more than 17 points probably against the Razorbacks on Saturday. But I just think the Razorbacks are going to score more. I think they're playing hard, Arkansas. I think they're playing hard for interim coach Bobby Petrino. On the other hand, man, this thing just looks like it's getting away from Hugh Freeze there at Auburn. Earlier this week, he asked for, he said it'd be great or something to that effect to get a vote of confidence from the administration, almost like he's just begging for a vote of confidence. And I think he's closer to being, shown the door than he is to a vote of confidence. One of these teams going to get it done on Saturday. I think it's going to be Arkansas. I like the Razorbacks -1 over Auburn.
Taylor Green got banged up in that game against Texas A&M as well. And that's an A&M defense that came into that game. Opponents were 3 of 35 on 3rd/4th down attempts. And he showed me a lot of toughness too. He's not the most the built guy. I mean, he's kind of a slender build, but man, he is. And this is where Petrino is. He has some talent. I mean, he can develop quarterbacks. He can put quarterbacks in favorable positions. And I mean, he played hurt and he did it 2 backdoor covers for the Razorbacks in the last 2 games in Knoxville and in Fayetteville against Tennessee and Texas A&M. Speaking of that game against Baylor, I thought the warning signs were out immediately. I mean, how many times can you want your quarterback draw? At some point, the guy's got to complete some passes. To Arnold's defense, he finally put a couple on the money Saturday. Long pass dropped and a critical one. Tied with about 3.5 minutes to go. Would get a first down in plus territory, maybe one more first down, set up for a game-winning field goal, another drop. So they just can't connect the dots on the plains right now. Talking to my sources too, just a lot of chatter, a lot of people upset. Nothing in the works just yet. Vote of confidence, huh? Come on, Hugh. I mean, please. I mean, he gonna be paid just fine. Players who place a qualifying same-game parlay of at least $10 on eligible NFL or college football games will receive 1 standard entry into the weekly Squares game. Winning standard Squares will be awarded a prize of a $20 bonus bet. See the app or website for more details. Well, a guy that's provided a spark, it's come off the bench. And this was a game day surprising announcement. The 3rd-string quarterback a week prior was going to be the starting quarterback. And that's with the Pitt Panthers in Narduzzi. Holstein was benched. The backup came in. And then a true freshman was announced a starter on Saturday the next week. Boston College, that's a good one to kind of get started. He's been good. He was really good even after a couple of interceptions in the first half in Doak Campbell in Tallahassee. So Mason Heinzel is 3-0 as a starter, and they are 3-0 against the spread. But 3 interceptions in the last 2. I'm just wondering a little bit. NC State, on the other hand, C.J. Bailey, by far his worst game of the season. He threw 3 picks in Notre Dame. That game was close, almost tied at half, and just not enough. I liked NC State. I thought they had some bad breaks in the game at Duke earlier this year as well. But coming off a bye, I expect the Bailey to rebound and be very competitive in this spot. And I'm just wondering if the freshman is due for, kind of a mediocre start. Again, I point to 3 interceptions the last 2 games. I think the Wolfpack in this spot, again, like the bye, Dorn, usually pretty good off of a bye, plus the 6.5 at Heinz Field against the Panthers, Paul.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing, too, that'll be working in your favor here, Jimmy, is the fact that several significant players, 3 of their best players for Pitt, may either not play or be limited against the Wolfpack on Saturday. Linebacker Rasheem Biles, he was a second-team All-ACC selection last year, He didn't play last week against Syracuse due to an undisclosed injury. And then their second team All America linebacker from a year ago, their top defender, probably Kyle Lewis, he left the game against Syracuse with an apparent head injury, did not return. So those two guys may or may not play. And then their top offensive weapon, their scat back Desmond Reed. He's been banged up the last few weeks, only played 20 snaps against Syracuse. So you'd have to wonder to yourself, how much is Reed going to play on Saturday against North Carolina State? So that would certainly bolster your case if those guys don't play at all or any of those are limited. So be an interesting game here in the ACC, and Pitt could be playing a little bit shorthanded.
Yeah, not that's why I'm not too crazy about those early season buys. The 3 games in, they got their bye. So this will be the fifth straight game for the Pitt Panthers, and it's one of the advantages for buys. I mean, a lot of coaches. I mean, Nick Saban always did it. I mean, he was going to schedule a bye before they played LSU every year, so it's an advantage for, to say the least. And I think Dorn's in a good spot right there. Log into your BetRivers app or betrivers.com account each week to opt into a 3-pack of college football profit boost, including a live boost, same game parlay boost, and a boost to use however you please. See the app or website for more details. Let's get to one of your picks, Paul. And here's your boys here that I'm still trying to get up. The Texas Longhorns. And I know they historically they're a little flat after the Red River rivalry. I mean, the data proves that. We've seen that enough. But 26-8 first downs against Kentucky, almost 2-to-1 yardage. Interesting here. Texas is 7-45. Paul, you mentioned that weather. You mentioned Fayetteville. We're talking about Starkville, Baton Rouge, Columbia, South Carolina. There's the SEC footprint. You can look for some shaky weather, and the forecast continued to get worse as we approach game day. But we could have some weather in Starkville. And the thing about this is Texas is on the road this year, is averaging under 14 points a game. That's regulation. We're not going to include that field goal against Kentucky, but under 14 points a game on the road right now. And Manning's numbers obviously have struggled as well. Nobody's going to kill you for first game at Ohio State against that defense, first time starting in a hostile environment. But Kentucky and some others here, I'm not so sure. You're looking at this under at 45.
Yeah, I'll go back first of all to the Oklahoma game for Texas. To me, it appeared that Texas and their somewhat polarizing quarterback Arch Manning had maybe turned a corner and taken a step in the right direction in that victory over the Sooners, 23-6, a week and a half ago in the Red River rivalry there in Dallas. Man, in that game, Manning looked more poised. He made a couple of NFL throws on out patterns, just put it on a rope in perfect timing. And you're thinking, man, this guy's coming around. The running game, they showed him a hint of a running game. Trey Wisner, he got 94 hard-earned yards on 22 carries against a very talented Oklahoma defense. But Texas's offensive rebirth, the last, was short-lived. Man, they really stunk it up against Kentucky. I think inarguably their worst offensive showing of the season. On one hand, the offensive line, which has struggled all year, they're about 3 players short on the offensive line. They just didn't block anyone. Manning's under duress the whole game. But on the other hand, Manning was equally culpable. He made on some intermediate throws. You're not going to hit 100% of those throws. They look easy, but there's timing involved. There's the physical nature of athletics involved. You're not going to hit 100%. But he just missed throw after throw. It seemed like he was really off, and that's been a problem for him all year. The Longhorns finished with only 179 total yards, a measly 3.25 yards per play. And you mentioned only 8 first downs. This is a Kentucky defense that gave up 455 yards a few weeks back to Ole Miss and 425 yards to Georgia. Texas only, again, 179 yards. So the Longhorns, they've now scored 23 points or fewer in each of their past 5 games against Power 4 opponents. And to be fair, 2 of those games have been against Ohio State. They've been against good people. So that's a little bit misleading. But 4 of those 5 games, last 5 games against Power 4 opponents have gone under the total as well. And Manning, again, just to reiterate, Manning and that offense been wildly inconsistent. But while they've been inconsistent, there's been one constant, and that's that Texas defense. They're one of the best in the country. Maybe Ohio State's better, but Texas, one of the top three defenses in the country. I think without question, they are elite. Only one of their 7 opponents, that being Florida, has scored more than 14 points this year against the Longhorns. And now to make matters worse for Texas's opposition, Colin Simmons, he's kind of been AWOL the first 5 games of the year. He was AWOL, it seemed like. Only 1.5 sacks. You're used to seeing, if you're a Texas fan, number one back there wreaking havoc and disrupting opposing teams' offense. Just didn't happen the first 5 games. Only 1.5 sacks. But in the last 2 games against Oklahoma and Kentucky, Colin Simmons, 5.5 sacks
Oh,
in those 2 games. He has come to life. I mean, I think people ought to really keep an eye on him the rest of the year. He's playing with purpose. It's almost like a fire has been lit under him or something. But I think until looking at this total again, until further notice, you just got to expect Texas's offense is going to struggle. They're not going to score that many points, but their defense not going to give up many points. Pretty low total here, but I'm still going under. I like Texas and Mississippi State. They're in Starkville under the total of 45.
oh, state fans are real fond of the Manning family too, huh? I mean, I mean, so they might have a little extra juice in those cowbells. Of course, Archie playing the old Egg Bowl back in his playing days as well. Eli, and now grandson and nephew Art going into Starkville for the first time. We do it every Tuesday and Thursday here. Paul Stone and I talk college football with our picks, angles, analysis, and in information. But our friends over at the 10, that's right. Doug Kazarian, Greg Waddell, and Troy Macker. That's every Wednesday and Friday. So 4 straight days of college football analysis pick shows here for you right here on College Sports Rush YouTube channel, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Let's get to Cincinnati and Baylor. Cincinnati at home 3.5, 67.5 against the Baylor Bears. How about Baylor's numbers defensively? They were really rough last year. This is one of the more respected defensive minds around, too. Dave Aranda, who's great runs at Wisconsin and LSU before he got the head job at Baylor. But 2 years in a row, they are all offense and no defense. 105 in total defense. These are D1, FCS rankings. 116 in scoring defense. 98th in yards per play defense. They are 4-3, but a couple of those games were really, really tight. SMU. How about Kansas State? I mean, they are much closer to 2-5 than 5-2. Sorsby, you may have seen that standalone game in Kansas City where it was quote unquote a Cincinnati home game, but all Nebraska red in that one. Sorsby ended the game in basically with an interception. Had to push it downfield at some point. He did, threw it. Since then, he has thrown 17 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's also rushed for 6 more TDs, 340. He is playing at a high level. He should have a field day against Baylor. Cincinnati, better team against Baylor at home, short number. Give me the Bearcats minus 3.5, Paul.
Yeah, I like what you're seeing here. At 6-1, Cincinnati is kind of quietly, you might say, ascended to number 21 this week in both major polls. And you mentioned the fact the Bearcats, they could be 7-0. Had they defeated Nebraska there in Kansas City to open the year, lost that game, I believe it was 20-17. Sorsby I think he threw an interception in the end
Their last
zone
possession. Yeah.
late in the game.
Yeah. Under a minute.
And I guess that's kind of the negative when you're talking about Brendan Sorsby. But the positive is that's his only interception of the season. This guy's thrown 18 touchdowns against just that one interception. So just incredible. I know everybody's heard about Baylor's quarterback, Sawyer Robertson, if you follow college football closely. But man, Brendan Sorsby, he's been a guy, and I think he might have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder entering this game with Robertson on the other sideline. Sorsby, 1,732 passing yards through 7 games this year, 9.5 yards per attempt. I mentioned the 18-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and the guy can run the football, 340 rushing yards this year, 5.9 yards per carry, so almost 6 yards a carry. Man, he is 6 touchdowns rushing. He's the real deal. I know he's not going to end up in New York, and nobody's talking about Brendan Sorsby as a Heisman candidate. But some of the guys I'm seeing considered, maybe he should be at least mentioned or talked about because he's having a big time year. And again, it's kind of one of these things. If it's not too late, I think I'll join you officially here on Cincinnati -3.5. I just think they just seem to be on a upward trajectory. Baylor comes into the year expected to contend. Many people picked Baylor
Yeah.
to contend in Big 12 for the Big 12 title, including yours truly, and it just hadn't happened. They weren't going to be great on defense to begin with, and they've had some injuries in that back seven defensively, which has made them even thinner on that side of the ball. But I think, like you said, Cincinnati's going to score some points. Sorsby's playing at such a high level. I like Cincinnati -3.5 as well over Baylor.
Two-part equation on, offenses versus defense, and you alluded to, hey, maybe Auburn, offensively wasn't too bad against Baylor's defense in that opener in Waco. So they just don't have a whole lot of players on that side. And Dave Aranda said it was his most talented, his best roster since he's been there, including their Big 12 and Sugar Bowl championship team back a few years ago. Paul, let's get to yours right here. Let's go to the Palouse. And Washington State has been covering for us a little bit as of late. They're 1.5 and 46.5 against Toledo. So Toledo, I thought, was the most talented teams coming into the MAC. We did our MAC preview earlier this week, but twice now. Jason Candle, this is his 10th year in Toledo since taking over from Matt Campbell. And he's good for about one of these straight up losses as a double digit favorite. Well, they got two of them this year. Now they travel up to the Palouse, with Wazzu and Oregon State kind of getting kicked to the curb. Wazzu's been a little bit of a covering machine as of late. We had them; they were more than competitive in Oxford against Ole Miss. Could have won that game. Wazzu is 1.5, 46.5 at home against Toledo in this unusual travel spot here for the Rockets.
Yeah, I think Washington State now, Jimmy, 3 straight covers for the Cougars. But it wasn't much of a September to remember for Washington State. They got off to that 2-0 start, but then they got outscored in back-to-back games by North Texas and Washington by a combined 118-34. They gave up 59 to both the Mean Green and the Huskies. But since they got drubbed in that Apple Cup by their in-state rival, Washington State, they've kind of ratcheted up their play. They first of all defeated Colorado State on the road by 17 points. Their last 3 games have been on the road. They hadn't played at home in over a month. Won in Fort Collins by 17, 20-3 over Colorado State. Then the last 2 weeks, man, they have really played well. They've gone to the home field to a pair of nationally ranked opponents, those being Ole Miss and Virginia, and they have taken those teams to the brink. The Cougars led Ole Miss 14-10 until late in the third quarter a couple of weeks ago. Ultimately fell to the 4th-ranked Rebels 24-21. And then last week, they led 18th-ranked Virginia 20-10 entering the 4th quarter. Couldn't hold on. Lost that game 22-20, actually on a late safety. So while they've lost their last 2 games against really good opponents and they've been highly competitive, could have won either of those games. You were talking about Toledo, certainly one of the preseason favorites there in the MAC this season, but they haven't been good on the road this year. That's evidenced by their 0-3 record away from home. You mentioned the 2 road losses as double-digit favorites. First of all, they lose on September 20th at Western Michigan as a 14-point favorite, lose to the Broncos 14-13. And then a couple of weeks ago, they traveled to Bowling Green, laying 10 points, lose that game 28-23. And if you watched or followed that game, Toledo actually led 21-0 late in the first half before the wheels came off and the Falcons came roaring back. You look at Toledo's victories, they've only won 4 games. 3 of those, however, have been against pretty lowly opponents. One against FCS Morgan State, 2 others against MAC bottom feeders Akron and Kent State. This Washington State team, they're 3-4. They don't have a whole lot to play for. Like you said, kick to the curb. They're kind of the odd man out this year. But what they do have to play for is bowl eligibility. They got to go 3-2 over their last 5 games, and they desperately they've got to beat Toledo at home to be able to reach that 6-game threshold. And I think they're going to do it. They've been playing well. They're playing, with some urgency.
Yeah.
They're playing with the purpose. Toledo hadn't been a good. They've been a poor traveler this year. They're having to travel across 3 time zones. Toledo, located in the Eastern time zone, going to Pullman, Washington in the Pacific. Give me Washington State minus the 1.5 over Toledo. I think the Cougars going to get that elusive victory and inch closer to bowl eligibility.
Paul, the last thing you talked about, I like your angle too, is the travel because Toledo, when they play up in class and get their check, from the it's mostly Big Ten opponents. Every now and then they'll dip down and play like Kentucky, which is a pretty short drive as well. But going to Pullman, Washington, I mean, this is a highly unusual travel spot here for the Toledo Rockets, and maybe we had them a little overrated. Going into the season as clearly the most talented team in the MAC. So I like you, Wazzu, minus 1.5 as well. All right, a little history here for you. First of all, it was November 17th, 2022. Now, the SMU Mustangs lost the conference championship game last year to the Clemson Tigers, but regular season conference games for Rhett Lashley, undefeated last year. Now, they dodged Clemson and Miami in the regular season, and then they were undefeated the year before in the American. You got to go back to his first year in Dallas, November 17th, 2022, at Tulane. Willie Fritz's Green Wave beat him 59-24. That's the last regular season conference game that Rhett Lashley has lost. They're coming off of a win against Clemson, a little revenge spot. They took advantage of Clemson, the first-time starter. Klubnik was out. He finished better than he started, but they were in a hole immediately as SMU won gate to wire. A little bit of a sandwich spot, I would say so. So SMU, they host Miami, top 10 Miami. So they beat in a revenge spot preseason top 5 Clemson, and they host top 10 Miami last week. There's sandwiches, and here's my favorite sandwich called a peacemaker. You know what a peacemaker po' boy is, Paul? That is oysters and shrimp po' boy. That's because when you bring it home to your wife, she can't complain because she can either eat the shrimp or the oyster. The peacemaker, overstuffed shrimp and oyster po' boy. That's kind of sandwich spot this one is. SMU 3-54.5 on the road. I love hearing people, man, that's a short number. Casual guys who don't really bet on it, man, that's a short number. Wake Forest is one of the surprise teams. I think at the beginning of the season, you had them maybe dead last in your power ratings. They're 5-2, and one of their losses tied at the end of the third quarter against NC State. And then they lose the other game by 1 point. They went for 2 in the first overtime after scoring on the first play and lose by 1 to undefeated Georgia Tech. That's their only 2 losses. Give me this better than expected Wake Forest team in this massive sandwich spot here against the SMU Mustangs. Again, November of 2022, last time the Mustangs. I don't know how up they'll be for this one between Clemson and Miami, Paul.
Yeah, Wake Forest, off to that nice 4-2 start against, a quite manageable schedule to this point, to be, frank about it. The next 3 games going to be telling for the Demon Deacons. Of course, they host SMU on Saturday, as we're discussing right now, and then they travel to Florida State and Virginia. SMU, they're in a tough point spread spot as well, in my opinion. They are off of a road victory as a road underdog at Clemson, and now they take to the road again, but this time as a favorite. That can kind of be a difficult point spread scenario for some teams to navigate. SMU's roster, I think it's unquestionably below the level of last year's, a notch or two. But they're still, they're still up, upper division ACC, if you will. For me, I still have a lot of respect for SMU. I think they've got the better roster here. Robbie Ashford, Wake's quarterback, although not as publicized as John Mateer's thumb. He's been battling a little bit of a thumb injury. Probably a pass for me because I do respect. Certainly this time of the year when you get to late October and early November, we talk so much about spots and situations. And man, this is not a favorable spot for SMU. And these teams been practicing since early August, and at some point they let the foot off the gas a little bit. And this could be the week for SMU. So it's a pass for me, but a very intriguing game up there this week in Winston Salem.
This new landscape of college football, the future is very bright for the SMU Mustangs. We've talked about this. And Paul, you hearing Rhett Lashley's name being thrown around for us? I mean, what he's done at SMU, it's got to be considerations for some people like Arkansas, which he obviously has ties there, but some others as well. They're all going to be as many as 30 to 35 FCS openings in college football this year. I mean, we're kind of just getting started with this coaching carousel, but it's going to be a massive amount. You can't go 16 for 16, everybody retaining their coach in the SEC. That's for damn sure. You can start with that. But any word on him? Maybe some distractions or that some people talking about his name?
Well, like you mentioned, I mean, the most obvious being Arkansas. You know, he's from the state of Arkansas, has very close ties there. But it's going to take a special situation, and I think Arkansas, just where they are in the pecking order of the SEC, I think that's a difficult job, difficult to win there. SMU's a much easier path to the 12-team playoff, which by all accounts is going to increase. I think you got much easier opportunity in the Atlantic Coast Conference, frankly, than in the SEC. So I think it's going to take a lot of money to get him away from SMU because SMU's got a lot of money. You know, a lot of people
Yeah,
who don't.
you think they got money? I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
like
you know,
nobody else. I mean,
we've talked about it, and a lot of
yeah.
people who don't follow that element of the sport maybe closely don't realize
Okay.
most, every team's got a big donor or two, but SMU, I mean, it's just incredible what they did to get in the ACC is
Yeah.
just unheard of and unprecedented. That they give up 10 years of television revenue and say, hey, please just let us in. We don't need that money for 10 years. That's how most programs function. Their budget functions off that television revenue. And
Yes.
SMU says, hey, we're good over here on the hilltop. We'll just get back with us in 10 years and we'll take a little piece of the pie then. We'll be okay till then. And it's just insane how much money they have. So I think Lashley, I think he knows he's got a good thing there. And I think it's going to take a really special situation to pry him away from the hilltop. And I just don't know, when that's going to happen. I think it's going to be a really unique situation.
Places like at SMU, at Bloomington, Indiana, and Oxford, Mississippi. The coaches that are being thrown out there for they're getting the player budget from their boosters right now. So that's the name of the game. That's as big as anything as far as the recruiting is. Yeah, it's a little bit of your geographic location and your history, but it's about the money. That is not a family that's being recruited right now that doesn't have that conversation. What about the money? So, and there may be more collectives. Certainly, there are more endowments that are bigger than SMU. But as far as the money and the willingness to spend the money, they're at the top of my list, man. I mean, they are hungry. Yeah, ACC revenue to fund the whole athletic department. Keep the change. Yeah, we're good for 10 years. There's something. We do it every Tuesday and Thursday. Don't forget our friends at the 10. They do it every Wednesday and Friday, same time here at the College Sports Rush YouTube channel. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott. We'll see you next week on a Tuesday for College Sports Rush YouTube channel, brought to you by Bet Rivers.